Introduction. Gluten has become a topic of hot debate in the dieting and nutrition world lately. Though some claim that gluten has no ill effects, others have demonstrated the many ways that cutting gluten out of your diet can improve your well-being. Is gluten really so bad for you? The truth is that even small amounts of gluten can be dangerous, especially for people suffering from celiac disease. If you have celiac disease, gluten intolerance, or a gluten sensitivity, you know just how important it is to steer clear of gluten in your meals. It can lead to all sorts of uncomfortable and often painful results like stomach upset, nausea, vomiting, and digestive issues. What you might not know is that diets high in gluten can negatively affect people without celiac disease too. Going gluten-free can help you feel more energetic throughout the day, shed a few extra pounds, and improve your overall health. I am intimately familiar with the difficulties of navigating celiac disease because it affects my own family, myself included. While I have only just started my journey of removing wheat and wheat products from my diet, my sister-in-law and nephew have both been managing their celiac disease for many years. They have an even more severe gluten intolerance than I do, which means leaving gluten-heavy foods out of meals is even more important. From them, I have learned the basics of which foods to avoid if I don't want to regret it later on and which foods are safe for me to eat. Now, I want to pass that knowledge on to you, guiding you through the minefield that is a gluten-free diet. Whether you can't tolerate gluten at all or you're just looking to see what all the fuss is about, a gluten-free diet is a great way to get and stay healthy, all by simply adjusting what you eat. The benefits of a gluten-free diet will show you how to make all your meals celiac-friendly, whether you're preparing them yourself or trying to find something you can eat at a restaurant. In addition to demystifying the gluten-free diet, you'll also learn how to make a few gluten-free meals that are so tasty you won't notice the difference. By restricting gluten-heavy foods and opting for gluten-free grains and flours, fruits, vegetables, and high-quality protein sources, you can avoid the damage gluten would otherwise do to your body and enjoy a healthier, more pain-free life. Chapter 1. What is celiac disease? Celiac disease, in the simplest possible terms, is a serious form of a gluten allergy. It's considered to be an autoimmune disease, which means your immune system starts to see your own body as something dangerous. It attacks perfectly healthy cells, leading to pain, uncomfortable symptoms, and often long-lasting damage to different parts of your body, such as your small intestine. In short, celiac disease isn't just inconvenient. It can pose a serious threat to your well-being. It is also remarkably widespread, with about 1 in every 100 people affected by it worldwide. Additionally, it's estimated that around 80% of people who have celiac disease don't even know they have it. Celiac Disease Foundation, 2016, paragraph 1, which can result in a lot of unnecessary suffering. Of course, not every case of celiac disease is exactly the same. As mentioned earlier, some of my family members have much worse symptoms when they eat gluten than I do, and there are certainly people with far more and far less serious cases than any of us. You might find that you're completely out of commission for a day or more after eating gluten, or you might get only a mild stomach ache and digestive issues. This is part of the reason why celiac disease can often be difficult to diagnose in people who don't get severe symptoms, as you might not even think to connect the issues to the last time you ate gluten. In fact, you might not even know exactly what gluten is and where it can be found, which can make it even harder to go gluten-free. Understanding gluten. The first step to understanding celiac disease is understanding gluten. Gluten is a type of protein found in wheat and products made with wheat. It's common in foods like bread, pasta, pastries, and cereal, as well as many hidden sources that we'll look at in greater detail in future chapters. Gluten can also come from various wheat-like crops, such as barley, rye, and malt, as well as wheat derivatives like semolina and farro. There's no shortage of gluten in the standard diet. Pick up the menu at your average restaurant and you'll see plenty of dishes heavy in gluten, whether you're ordering a big plate of spaghetti or a sandwich. Gluten can be a problem even if you're trying to eat healthy. Just take a look at the food pyramid, which for years was the standard for nutritious eating. The largest section at the base of the pyramid is carbohydrates, which is primarily made up of foods that contain gluten. If you have celiac disease, or even if you're just trying to limit the amount of gluten you eat for dieting and overall health purposes, you'll have to completely flip the food pyramid on its head and get the majority of your energy from gluten-free sources. If you don't, you'll end up regretting it. What happens when you eat gluten? Just about everyone who has celiac disease has slipped up and eaten gluten one time or another. Whether it's because we didn't read a package, someone claimed a meal was gluten-free when it actually wasn't, or we just didn't know we had celiac disease yet, it happens to the best of us despite our efforts to the contrary. But why do we feel so much pain and discomfort when we eat gluten? To answer this question, we have to look at how the body of someone with celiac disease responds to the presence of gluten. Your autoimmune response. When you eat gluten, your body targets the cells in your small intestine and starts to attack them. Specifically, it damages the villi, which are structures that look similar to tiny fingers and line the inside of your small intestine. The villi are responsible for absorbing the nutrients from your digested food into your body. When they're damaged, you can no longer get the same nutritional benefits from your meals that you would otherwise, which can leave your body without the energy and other compounds it needs to function normally. If you continue to routinely eat gluten when you have celiac disease, the damage inflicted on your body can get even worse as time goes on. Long-term side effects and complications range from skin rashes and lactose intolerance to infertility, bone weakness, and nerve damage. Bishop, 2021, paragraph 7. These may occur even if you don't have any noticeable digestive issues after eating gluten, as all the damage occurs under the surface. If you're diagnosed with celiac disease, it's important to stop eating gluten right away so you can minimize your risk of developing these conditions. The connection between celiac disease and your genes. Celiac disease is almost always hereditary, which means it can be passed down genetically. Studies have found that people with a first-degree relative with celiac disease, parent, child, sibling, have a 1 in 10 risk of developing celiac disease. Celiac Disease Foundation, ND, paragraph 3, which is a fairly significant correlation. If one of your family members has celiac disease, it's worth getting tested to see if you have any form of gluten allergy, even if you don't experience severe symptoms. Still, just because you have the genes making you susceptible to celiac disease doesn't mean you'll be incapable of eating gluten from the moment you're born. Celiac disease can make itself known at any age, from childhood to well into your senior years. It's also believed that conditions that increase your immune system response might also trigger the onset of celiac disease. Infections like gastroenteritis, which causes inflammation in your intestines, frequently precede the development and diagnosis of celiac disease in many people. Celiac disease symptoms. One of the most reliable ways to determine whether or not you may have celiac disease is to keep a food journal. Write down each meal you have, including the date and time. Pay careful attention to any time you eat something with gluten in it. Then make a note of any time you experience one or more of the symptoms of celiac disease. If you experience any of these common symptoms occurring frequently after you eat gluten, you should speak to your doctor or a gastroenterologist about getting a blood test. Digestive issues. Digestive issues are the most pervasive sign of celiac disease. Some symptoms are fairly mild. You may experience some stomach upset and gas, and you may have to go to the bathroom more frequently than usual. In other cases, you might experience more severe symptoms like constipation that lasts multiple days, diarrhea, or any other unusual bowel movements that are disruptive or painful. Most of the time, these symptoms will go away on their own as the gluten works its way out of your system, but they'll come right back if you eat gluten again. Vomiting and nausea. When you have digestive issues, nausea and vomiting often aren't far behind. You may feel anything from a brief, light nausea spell to severe, repeated vomiting that continues over the course of a few hours. If you get very ill after eating gluten, make sure to drink a lot so you can replenish the fluids you might lose from vomiting and diarrhea. Otherwise, you may end up dehydrated. Bloating. Bloating often occurs alongside gas. When your digestive tract becomes inflamed and gas builds up, your stomach may feel and look bloated. It can be uncomfortable to walk around until the bloating goes away. Of course, bloating can be caused by many different things, such as drinking a carbonated beverage or eating too much. Pay attention to whether you feel bloated specifically after eating meals with gluten, or if there may be other dietary or non-dietary causes for your discomfort. Fatigue. Celiac disease is an autoimmune disorder, which means your immune system is working overtime just like it would if you were sick. Unfortunately, there's no real enemy to fight, so you experience all of the fatigue without any of the benefits of recovering from an illness. Alternatively, fatigue may be the result of mild malnutrition since you're not absorbing the nutrients you should be getting from your meals. Pain. It's common to feel pain after eating gluten when you have celiac disease. Typically, this is abdominal pain, though you may also get headaches or migraines. Abdominal pain is usually a result of your body's immune system attacking the cells in your small intestine, while headaches are often a product of not getting enough nutrients in your diet due to your damaged villi. Weight loss. While some people may experience weight gain with celiac disease, there's also a good chance you'll lose weight. Far from just shedding a few extra pounds and getting in shape, this is the kind of weight loss you'll want to avoid, since it's the result of malnutrition. It can become dangerous and lead to other conditions like anemia and frequent dizziness. If you're looking for a healthy and safe way to lose weight, going gluten-free is a great solution that doesn't deprive your body of important nutrients. When you cut back on gluten, you cut back on a lot of simple sugars that lead to weight gain, so you can slim down the right way and still look and feel your best. Less common symptoms. Celiac disease primarily causes symptoms related to your digestive system, but you may find that it affects many other areas of your body. You may develop ulcers or canker sores in your mouth that typically last for a week or more. You can develop itchy and sometimes painful rashes. When bending your joints, you might find that there's more pain than usual. In some cases, this is related to osteoporosis, a loss of density in your bones, or osteomalacia, where your bones become softer. Either condition can put you at a higher risk for fracturing or breaking a bone. Some celiac disease symptoms are very serious and require additional medical care. It can damage your spleen and reduce how effective it is at filtering your blood in a condition known as hyposplenism. An inability to properly absorb iron in your diet can lead to anemia over time, and since one of the jobs of your spleen is reabsorbing iron in your blood cells, hyposplenism only makes this worse. When you have anemia, your body produces fewer blood cells than usual, which leaves you feeling fatigued and dizzy. If you frequently feel numbness and a tingling sensation in your arms and legs, this can indicate damage to your nervous system from celiac disease too. Many of these less common symptoms may be the result of the damaged villi in your stomach not absorbing enough nutrients. This is another way that damage from eating gluten can add up over time, and yet another reason to take your celiac disease seriously. Celiac treatments. Since celiac disease can deprive your body of nutrients and limit the kinds of food you can safely eat, Many doctors and dietitians will recommend you take vitamins and supplements to ensure you're getting everything your body needs to thrive. However, there's no real cure for celiac disease. You cannot take a pill and get over it, nor will you eventually grow out of it. In all likelihood, you'll have to manage your celiac disease for the rest of your life. The only surefire way to do this is to adjust your eating habits and stick to a gluten-free diet. It's not always easy to stop eating foods you enjoy and go completely gluten-free, but it's much better than the alternative of constantly being in pain and harming your body with every meal. While you may miss some foods, it's completely possible to eat delicious, nutritionally complete meals without any gluten and to live a perfectly happy and healthy life even though you have celiac disease. When you look at it this way, going gluten-free is actually a remarkably easy solution to an otherwise significant problem. All it takes to never experience pain or serious health problems from gluten again is changing what you eat. Chapter 2. Going gluten-free. Given just how damaging gluten can be to anyone with celiac disease, it's a no-brainer that you should avoid it. What starts out as short-term pain can very quickly develop into long-term health issues. But what about people who aren't actually sensitive to gluten? Are there still adverse effects to worry about? For a food group that's become a staple part of most people's meals, too much gluten in anyone's diet can cause many issues. These problems aren't just restricted to people with celiac disease. Cutting gluten out of your diet and going gluten-free is a worthwhile endeavor for anyone looking to improve their health. In this chapter, we'll review some of the reasons why you should rethink grabbing a bagel for breakfast every morning for the sake of your health. We'll also go over some of the common and not so common sources of gluten so you know what to avoid. Why you should skip gluten. Eating a gluten-free diet can be incredibly beneficial to your health even if you don't have celiac disease or a gluten intolerance. Gluten has been linked to a number of different health issues, especially when it's consumed in large quantities like in the standard diet. Additionally, many of the foods that contain high amounts of gluten, like bread and cereal, have high amounts of sugar and can contribute to weight gain. Whether you can eat gluten without issue or not, there's a good argument to be made for why you should try to avoid it. Too many simple sugars. Carbohydrates come in two different forms, simple carbs and complex carbs. Complex carbs are generally better for you because they take more energy and time for your body to digest and break down. This means you're burning some calories while getting a solid, consistent source of energy. Complex carbs are often found in foods made from whole grains. While you can't have whole grains derived from wheat, barley, and rye if you're avoiding gluten, you can still have some such as brown rice and quinoa. Additionally, and more importantly, what you might miss out on when you cut out wheat bread, you more than make up for by cutting out simple carbs. Simple carbs are often called simple sugars, and for good reason, as they can be very bad for your health. Your body breaks down these simple sugars very quickly, so you don't burn many calories. Instead, you get a large amount of new calories all at once, which can lead to a sugar rush and a resulting crash. Additionally, since you typically don't use up all the instant calories from simple sugars at once, your body tends to store these excess calories as body fat. The more simple sugars you eat, the more likely you are to put on excess weight, and the more likely you are to develop other harmful health conditions like higher blood pressure, inflammation, weight gain, diabetes, and fatty liver disease. Harvard's Men Health Watch 2019, paragraph 11, if sugar plays a large role in your everyday diet. Unfortunately, these simple sugars are exceedingly common in the standard diet. Anywhere refined and processed sugar can be found, simple carbs are there. This includes obvious sources like candies and cakes, but it also includes anything that contains white flour. These heavily processed foods are bad news for anyone, but the good news is that if you're sticking to a gluten-free diet, you can probably avoid them anyway. When you cut out most bready products, you cut out a large number of foods that are high in simple sugars, replacing them with vegetables and healthier sources of complex carbohydrates. Decrease your risk of developing those related health conditions and improve your overall health, all by changing what you eat. Gut irritation. We've already discussed how gluten can harm your gut if you have celiac disease or another form of gluten intolerance, but it's important to note that gut troubles are common even for people who don't seem to have any issues processing gluten. You might not notice it, but gluten's harmful effects may be lurking just under the surface. Diets high in gluten have been tied to bowel diseases such as irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, and inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, which includes Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, Kubala 2019, paragraph 41, and people who have these conditions may have more trouble managing them if they eat a lot of gluten. Some studies have also indicated that eating gluten may increase intestinal permeability, which means it's easier for various substances to pass through your intestine walls. Normally, the cells that make up the walls of your intestines are packed closely together, but too much gluten may loosen them and allow things to slip through. Your gut contains lots of good bacteria that assist in digestion, but when these bacteria escape the gut and enter your bloodstream, this can result in extensive, painful inflammation. This phenomenon has been dubbed leaky gut syndrome, and it's been linked to an ever-increasing number of conditions that are either created or made worse by inflammation. If you want to prevent gut pain and avoid further harming your health with a leaky gut, cutting gluten out of your diet is one of the most effective ways to do so. Connection to other autoimmune disorders. Celiac disease is just one of the many autoimmune disorders that have been connected to gluten consumption. For example, studies have found that for type 1 diabetes, wheat gluten may play a role in initiating the disease. Barbeau, 2012, paragraph 1, alongside exposure to viral illnesses. You might not think of diabetes as an autoimmune disorder, but it involves many of the same mechanisms as celiac disease. Insulin is usually produced in your pancreas, but when you have type 1 diabetes, your body is unable to produce a sufficient amount because your immune response views cells in your pancreas as foreign invaders. The cells that would otherwise produce insulin are attacked and killed. Additionally, there is evidence to suggest that type 2 diabetes is also linked to autoimmune disorders and potentially a high gluten diet as well. Either way, eating a lot of simple sugars like the kind found in many gluten products can trigger and worsen both kinds of diabetes, so it's best to avoid gluten whenever possible. Another condition that has been linked with increased gluten consumption is arthritis. Eating gluten is frequently connected to arthritis flare-ups that cause pain and stiffness from inflammation in your joints. This is partly because two significant triggers for arthritis pain are sugar and alcohol, both of which often include gluten. Beer is typically brewed with barley, rye, or wheat, which are all grains high in gluten. Many other foods that contain a lot of gluten, such as white breads and cereals, also contain plenty of added sugar. When combined, this can really aggravate your arthritis. Additionally, inflammation from eating gluten when you have celiac disease can occur anywhere in your body, not just in your intestines. This means you could trigger swelling in your joints, making arthritis symptoms even worse. Avoiding carbohydrates in general, and gluten in particular, may result in fewer arthritic flare-ups and less pain. Decreasing the amount of gluten in your diet could also decrease your risk of developing fibromyalgia, which causes fatigue and muscle pain throughout your body. One study found that non-celiac gluten sensitivity may be an underlying treatable cause of fibromyalgia syndrome, and that remarkable clinical improvement can be achieved with a gluten-free diet in patients with fibromyalgia, even if celiac disease has been ruled out. Isasi et al., 2014, paragraph 18. You might save yourself from the difficulty of managing the pain and exhaustion that comes from fibromyalgia just by changing up what you eat. Avoiding gluten. Now you know the why of avoiding gluten. You just need to know the how. Once you understand which foods you should avoid and which foods are completely safe for you to eat, you'll be able to start cutting gluten out of your regular diet. Still, gluten can hide in unlikely places. It's no surprise that regular bread isn't gluten-free, but you might be caught off guard by products that contain less obvious forms of gluten and gluten byproducts. If you know what to look out for, you'll become better at avoiding it. Going gluten-free is a lot easier when you make your own meals from scratch. It is more difficult to know if a dish is safe if you didn't make it yourself, and you can't be sure what ingredients went into it. Keep this in mind when going to a restaurant, eating prepared frozen meals, or eating at a friend's house. You may have to ask about the ingredients that went into a meal, or, if you're at a gluten-conscious restaurant, ask for a menu with only gluten-free foods. Still, when you know the basics of what to eat and what to avoid, you can be fairly confident that you won't have to experience the pain that comes with eating gluten ever again. You just need to commit to taking your gluten intolerance seriously and get a little more choosy about what ends up on your plate. Foods that contain gluten. Gluten can hide in a lot of foods that you might eat frequently. Let's start with the most obvious sources of gluten so you can cut the biggest troublemakers out of your diet first. Gluten is typically found in various different kinds of carbs. First and foremost, stop eating breads made with wheat, rye, or barley. You should avoid any bread that doesn't specifically say it's gluten-free on the packaging. Additionally, skip similar products made with white or whole wheat flour. This includes flour tortillas, crackers, hot dog and hamburger buns, and baked goods like donuts, bagels, muffins, cakes, cupcakes, and brownies. All of these foods are naturally filled with gluten unless they're specifically prepared without it. Another common source of gluten is in cereal. Most cereals are made with wheat or malt, a byproduct of barley. Even though cereals like Rice Krispies and Frosted Flakes don't contain any wheat because they use rice and corn flakes respectively, they both contain malt. Therefore, they can give you digestive issues if you have celiac disease or a gluten intolerance. While most cereals should be avoided as much for their gluten content as for their sugar content, there are still quite a few that are completely gluten-free. For example, most plain cornflake cereal is okay to eat, though some may add malt for flavoring. Most cereals without wheat or malt are instead made out of gluten-free grains like rice, millet, buckwheat, or oats, all of which are okay to eat. Look out for boxes with the gluten-free label to be sure the cereal is safe. As filling as hearty meals like pizza and pasta can be, you should avoid them if you don't want to eat gluten. A standard pizza crust is made with flour, as is any other dish that involves dough in some form unless otherwise specified. Pasta made from wheat, farina, or semolina is all off limits. There are many brands that offer gluten-free versions of these foods, but the regular versions are dangerous for you. Finally, watch what you drink. Some beverages, especially alcoholic ones, use wheat and other sources of gluten in the brewing process. Specifically, beer is the most notable threat, while nearly all distilled alcoholic beverages like whiskey, vodka, and gin are safe to drink. This is because proteins are removed during the distilling process, so there is no gluten left in the final product. Beer, on the other hand, is fermented rather than distilled, so it can still trigger celiac disease. Still, if you really want to be sure you won't have any negative side effects, the safest thing to do is to entirely avoid anything brewed with grains that contain gluten. Soft drinks are typically safe, with all Pepsi and Coke products being certified as gluten-free, but other brands may use natural flavors as a way to sneak in gluten where you least expect it. Hidden sources of gluten. Following a gluten-free diet can be very challenging at times because many meals contain hidden sources of gluten. For example, an otherwise perfectly fine serving of mixed frozen vegetables might come with a sauce that uses flour as a thickener. Many foods that say they're made with natural flavorings might derive some of those flavors from products with gluten. These are tricky ways manufacturers might sneak gluten into your meals under your nose, whether it's on purpose or not. As a general rule, the safest foods to eat are whole, fresh foods and meals you prepare yourself. If you need to buy prepackaged food, opt for products that specifically say gluten-free on their labels, as these are generally safe. This label is regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, and it is generally trustworthy, though there may be occasional exceptions, and it's always best to err on the side of caution. A study performed by the FDA found that more than 99.5% of sampled food products labeled gluten-free are in compliance with FDA's requirement that such foods have less than 20 parts per million of gluten, FDA 2017, paragraph 1, which would not trigger a reaction in most people with celiac disease. As tight as the regulations are, there will always be one or two things that slip through the cracks, so be careful what you buy. For everything else, keep a very careful eye out for any of these common sources of hidden gluten: soy sauces, vitamin and mineral supplements, artificial colorings and flavorings, stocks and broths, flavored rice packs, cured deli meats, hot dogs, gravies and sauces, gum and candies, imitation seafood, salad dressings, meat replacements with seitan, baking powder, caramel color. Keep in mind that not every one of these kinds of products is guaranteed to have gluten. There are plenty of vitamins with gluten and many soy sauce brands that are gluten-free. These are just various foods that could contain gluten, even though they don't fit the typical bready view of gluten, so you should be more cautious when buying them. Always check the ingredients. The most reliable method for making sure packaged food is gluten-free is checking the ingredient list. Don't just look for gluten or wheat, rye, and barley. Also scan the list for ingredients that contain gluten, such as malt, malted milk or vinegar, spelt, gram flour, durum, bulgur, kamut, matzah, farina, semolina, and wheat derivatives like bran, germ, starch, and flour. While whey sounds similar to wheat, it's actually a dairy protein which is safe for people with celiac disease. Gluten in non-food products. While food is your main concern, it's not the only place you might find gluten. Be wary and check the ingredients for any product that comes in contact with your mouth or eyes, or which is applied to your skin, as gluten exposure can still occur. Manufacturers may use ingredients containing gluten to make a variety of different products, including toothpastes, medications, sunscreens, mouthwashes, laundry detergents, dishwasher detergents, soaps, stamp and envelope glues, lip balms, makeup products, lotions, hairsprays. When in doubt, you may have better luck making sure you're using gluten-free variants of these products by contacting the company's helpline and asking, or by looking at what other people have recommended on celiac-friendly websites. There are many forums and social media groups specifically for people who can't tolerate gluten, and most posters have a lot of experience avoiding gluten with plenty of tips for helping you do the same. Chapter 3. Naturally gluten-free foods. While there are many foods that naturally contain gluten and plenty that have gluten added to them in the preparation process, there are far more that are completely gluten-free. It may initially seem like you have to cut out many of your favorite foods from your diet to avoid aggravating your celiac disease or gluten sensitivity, but there's plenty you can still eat. It's very easy to enjoy delicious and healthy meals while sticking to a gluten-free diet if you know what to look out for and what's okay to eat. If you know which foods you should be avoiding, as we covered in the previous chapter, you already have a good idea of what kinds of foods are okay to eat. While many grains pose a problem and prepackaged goods with many additional ingredients can be an issue, You can still pile your plate high with plenty of fresh foods that contain no naturally occurring gluten. Just be cautious about any frozen, shelf-stable, or prepared versions of these foods, as they may contain gluten that was added in the preservation or preparation process. If you're buying anything other than whole foods, always read the label carefully and look for an FDA-approved gluten-free label on the package to be extra certain. Naturally gluten-free food groups. The most reliable way to avoid accidentally eating gluten is to stick to buying whole foods whenever possible. These foods don't have anything added to them, so you can be sure that there's no gluten or other harmful additives involved if you're buying naturally gluten-free foods. Whole foods are often healthier anyway, with no extra sugars or fats, so you're doing your body a favor either way. Keep in mind that if you're buying whole foods, you're going to have to cook your own meals most of the time. While there are many restaurants that offer gluten-free takeout, this isn't a reliable long-term strategy, and it will get unhealthy and expensive fast. If you're used to cooking from a box or following the directions on a package, it might be a little tricky for you to get used to cooking your meals from scratch, but it's well worth the effort. You'll learn how to make tasty meals that you can be completely certain are free from gluten, and with every dish you cook, you'll become even better at it. Additionally, we'll cover some easy and delicious gluten-free recipes in Chapter 5 so you can learn the basics in no time at all. You can find healthy and naturally gluten-free foods in many different food groups, including fruits, vegetables, proteins, and dairy products. Fruits. All fruits are naturally free of gluten as long as they are fresh. You can use any fresh fruit you like in your meals, or you can just grab a piece of fruit as a healthy, natural snack. Just be careful if you're eating processed fruits that have been dried, canned, or stored in syrup, as well as any that were packed with additional natural or artificial flavors added. These additions can often contain gluten or gluten byproducts. Some fruits that are completely gluten-free include apples, bananas, plums, oranges, tangerines, clementines, blackberries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, cranberries, grapes, peaches, nectarines, apricots, avocados, melons, grapefruits, kiwis, lemons, pears, mangoes, dragon fruits, pineapples, and pomegranates. Vegetables. Just like fruits, vegetables are all gluten-free when sold as whole foods. You need only to keep an eye out for ways that vegetables can be packaged with ingredients that contain gluten. For example, a salad mix might include croutons or a dressing that uses gluten as a thickener. A pre-made smoothie might include malt. A container of frozen vegetables might have soy sauce or another sauce that contains gluten. Pre-made vegetarian meals can still include grains you should avoid. Stick to fresh produce or pay careful attention to the ingredients list. Some vegetables you can eat on a gluten-free diet include lettuce, spinach, kale, cauliflower, carrots, broccoli, asparagus, cucumbers, peppers, eggplants, onions, potatoes, garlic, mushrooms, pumpkins, tomatoes, Brussels sprouts, zucchini, celery, herbs, and spices. Dairy. Most dairy products do not contain gluten in their natural form. Gluten may be added during processing, so check the labels when you buy products that might include added flavors, malt, or gluten-based thickeners. Naturally gluten-free dairy products include milk, yogurt, shredded cheese, deli slices and bricks, cream cheese, cottage cheese, ricotta cheese, butter, curds, light and heavy creams, buttermilk, and evaporated and condensed milks. Beans, legumes, and nuts. If you're a vegetarian or vegan, beans and nuts are a great plant-based source of protein that are totally compatible with a gluten-free diet. Whether you're using them in a recipe or enjoying them as a convenient midday snack, don't be afraid to include them. Gluten-free beans, legumes, and nuts include black beans, garbanzo beans, kidney beans, pinto beans, peas, lentils, split peas, peanuts, cashews, almonds, walnuts, Brazil nuts, hazelnuts, pistachios, and macadamia nuts. Meat and poultry. All meat and poultry is naturally gluten-free. Again, you should be wary of anything that comes prepackaged and prepared with added ingredients. You should also avoid or check the labels for cured meats like ham, shelf-stable meat snacks like jerky, and anything coated in sauce. Gluten-free meat and poultry options include white and dark meat chicken, turkey, duck, ground beef, steaks, pork roasts and chops, sausages, lamb, veal, and mutton. Fish and seafood. Like many other sources of protein, whole fish, unprepared fish cutlets, and plain shellfish are all fine to eat on a gluten-free diet as long as you don't also have a seafood allergy. Just avoid any breaded options like fish sticks, fried calamari, and crab cakes. Fish and seafood options compatible with a gluten-free diet include whole fish, fish fillets, shrimp, lobster, crab, clams, mussels, grilled calamari, scallops, and crayfish. What about grains? While you have to leave wheat, barley, rye, and their byproducts off your dinner table, there are still plenty of grains you can enjoy on a gluten-free diet. You do have to be somewhat careful about what you eat, as there's a risk that the grains were processed near sources of gluten. This could result in cross-contamination, turning an otherwise gluten-free meal into one that could harm your body. The same danger is present if you buy them from bulk bins, so opt for sealed packages instead. Most gluten-free grains are available at the grocery store, but you may need to visit specialty health food stores to find some of the more uncommon ones. Gluten-free grains and other starchy foods include rice, corn, potatoes, soy, tapioca, beans, cassava, quinoa, millet, sorghum, arrowroot, teff, amaranth, kasha or buckwheat groats, yucca, chia seeds, flax seeds, nut flours, and gluten-free oats. As you can see, there's still plenty to eat even if you have to avoid gluten. You can expand your choices even further by using gluten-free substitutes for flour, breads, pastas, and more. Chapter 4. Gluten-free substitutes. Many foods that would normally have naturally occurring gluten have gluten-free alternatives you can buy ready-made right off the shelf at your local store. These alternatives make living gluten-free much easier, as you can enjoy many of your favorite foods without suffering the harmful side effects. You've probably seen these gluten-free substitutes before at the grocery store, providing a convenient alternative to bread, pasta, pizza, breaded frozen meats, and much more. They use flours that don't contain gluten, such as rice flour, almond flour, or coconut flour. The gluten-free industry is so large that there is a gluten-free version of nearly everything. You can even get good gluten-free bread if you head to the freezer aisle or pick up some rice flour and bake it yourself. However, quality and taste can vary even with store-bought goods. You shouldn't have to sacrifice flavor to cut gluten out of your diet, so try a few different brands and see what you like most, or look online for recommendations from other people with celiac disease. If you're buying these gluten-free substitutes, keep two concerns in mind. First, these foods are often heavily processed and typically serve as less healthy choices than many of the naturally gluten-free foods discussed in the previous chapter. It's best to have whole foods make up the majority of your diet. Second, beware of foods that are labeled wheat-free and not gluten-free. These foods may not have wheat, but they can have gluten in other forms which can aggravate your celiac disease all the same. Gluten-free alternatives include far more than just gluten-free breads and flours. You can get all kinds of foods that you might have previously assumed were off the table as long as you're buying the right brands and shopping carefully, always reading the packaging and labels before you make a purchase. These include celiac-safe versions of pasta, fresh and prepackaged baked goods, breakfast foods, snack foods, chicken nuggets, and candy bars. Other important gluten-free considerations. While most foods are clearly gluten-free, there are some special cases where you'll need to exercise a little more caution. These cases include oats, soups, sauces, and various beverages. Oats. Plain oats that have not come into contact with any other grain are gluten-free. Theoretically, this means you should be able to buy oats and oat products safely at the store, but this isn't always the case thanks to the risk of cross-contamination. Oats are typically harvested and processed with the same equipment that is also used for wheat, so some gluten residue may be left behind. Additional cross-contamination occurs as these oats are shipped to stores and stored next to products that contain gluten, sometimes in open containers with grain scoops that a customer could unthinkingly use for both gluten and gluten-free grains. Your best bet is to purchase only sealed packages, and ideally only from companies where there is no allergen warning on the label about the oats being processed in a factory that also processes gluten. Always read the labels and look for indications that the product is labeled specifically as gluten-free, especially if you're buying oat products like granolas and granola bars. Most people who have celiac disease can eat about 1/2 of a cup of uncontaminated oats each day without issue. Soups and sauces. Many soups that are broth-based are completely gluten-free, but others are rife with hidden gluten. This is an especially big concern for cream-based soups, which are often thickened with wheat. Sauces are frequently thickened using this method as well. Always read all the ingredients when you're in the store and again before you eat these products so you can be absolutely certain they're free of gluten. Beverages. Beverages like juices, sports drinks, and sodas are generally gluten-free. All you typically have to worry about for non-alcoholic drinks is the presence of malt, such as in a malted milkshake. Things get a little more complicated when we look at alcoholic drinks. As previously mentioned, beer is the biggest beverage concern on a gluten-free diet, as the distilling process removes the gluten for drinks like hard ciders and liquors. Other alcoholic beverages that are brewed and not distilled, which means you should avoid them, include lagers, ales, and malt beverages, as well as malt vinegars that are made from the same grains. Wine is typically safe, usually not containing enough gluten to cause a reaction. This is true even for wines fermented in barrels lined with wheat paste, which has been historically used for port, muscatel, and Madeira wines. However, you should exercise greater caution when drinking specialty wines or wines with additives. Dessert wines may include malt, as can wines with added flavoring like wine coolers. Check the labels and, when in doubt, contact the company that produces the wine for a firm answer. Chapter 5. Gluten-Free Recipes. It's time to put those lists of gluten-friendly alternatives and naturally gluten-free foods to work. You can absolutely still enjoy a wide variety of delicious meals on a gluten-free diet, and you don't have to resort to eating rice and beans for every meal. Here are 14 recipes you can add to your repertoire, even if you're not the best chef. Breakfast. Buttermilk pancakes. Even if you're going gluten-free, that doesn't mean you have to give up a nice stack of warm, fluffy pancakes in the morning. All you have to do is swap out regular flour for a gluten-free tapioca flour and adjust the other ingredients to reach the right consistency. Prep time, 20 minutes. Cook time, 8 minutes. Total time, 30 minutes. Servings, 5. Ingredients: 6 fluid ounces of buttermilk, 1/2 ounce melted butter, 1 free-range egg, 2 ounce tapioca flour, 1 ounce fine grind cornmeal, 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon salt, clarified butter for cooking. To serve: butter, crispy bacon, or gluten-free maple syrup. Directions: 1. In a large bowl, stir together the buttermilk and melted butter. Crack an egg in a separate small bowl, beat it to break the yolk, then add the egg to the larger bowl and mix everything together. 2. Sift the tapioca flour, cornmeal, baking soda, and salt together. 3. Pour the wet ingredients in with the dry ones and mix just until the ingredients form a batter. Don't worry about any lumps, as overmixing will make your pancakes too dense. 4. Heat a heavy, non-stick or iron frying pan over a medium flame. Grease the pan with clarified butter, then spoon a generous tablespoon of batter into the pan. Spread the batter out with the back of the spoon. 5. Cook for about 3 to 4 minutes or until small bubbles form on the surface of the batter. Gently flip the pancake over and cook for another 4 minutes or until golden. Remove the pancake from the heat and keep warm. Repeat this process until you've used up all the batter. 6. Plate each serving of 3 pancakes and enjoy with your favorite toppings and sides, such as butter, maple syrup, and bacon. Potato and chorizo hash. Potatoes and eggs are common breakfast staples that are just as at home in a gluten-free kitchen as they are in a non-celiac home. Enjoy this delicious breakfast hash, which requires no more than a handful of ingredients. Prep time, 15 minutes. Cook time, 25 minutes. Total time, 40 minutes. Servings, 2. Ingredients: 2 medium potatoes, 2 tablespoons olive oil or rapeseed oil, 40 grams of chorizo, 1 red onion diced, 1 red chili diced, 2 eggs, 4 tablespoons white wine vinegar, fresh chives diced for garnish. Directions: 1. Fill a pot about halfway with water, then add the potatoes. Put the pot on the stove over medium-high heat and boil until the potatoes are tender enough to pierce with a fork, which should take about 15 minutes. 2. Let the potatoes rest out of the water until they're cool to the touch, then dice them into rough cubes. 3. Warm the oil in a frying pan or large skillet over medium heat. Add the chorizo, onion, chili, and potatoes to the pan and fry until the meat is cooked through and the potatoes are crisp and golden, or about 10 minutes. 4. As this is cooking, poach the eggs. Heat about 4 inches of water in the vinegar until it boils, then lower the heat to a steady simmer and stir to create a vortex. Crack an egg, then pour it into the center of the vortex and let it cook for about 3 minutes. Remove it with a slotted spoon to let it rest. Repeat this process with the second egg. 5. Plate the hash and top with the poached egg and chives to serve. Lunch and dinner. Pesto pasta with chicken. Homemade pesto sauce isn't nearly as difficult as it might sound at first, and considering how good it tastes, you won't even notice you're eating gluten-free pasta. Prep time, 15 minutes. Cook time, 10 minutes. Total time, 25 minutes. Servings, 8. Ingredients: 1 cup of any gluten-free pasta, 1 teaspoon olive oil, 2 cloves garlic minced, 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts sliced or cubed, 1/2 teaspoon crushed red pepper flakes, 1/2 cup black and green olives, 1/2 cup sun-dried tomatoes, fresh basil for garnish. For the pesto: 3 cups packed fresh basil leaves, 4 cloves garlic, 1/2 cup olive oil, 3/4 of a cup grated Parmesan cheese, 1/4 cup pine nuts. Directions: 1. Start by making the pesto. Add basil, garlic, olive oil, Parmesan, and pine nuts to a food processor or blender. Blend everything into a smooth paste. 2. Fill about 3/4 of a large pot with water. Add salt and a drizzle of olive oil. Bring it to a boil over high heat, then reduce the heat to medium and add the pasta. cook until tender or about 8 to 10 minutes. Drain the pasta and set it aside. 3. In a large skillet, warm up the oil over a medium flame. Sauté the garlic for a minute or two, then add the chicken and red pepper flakes. Cook, stirring occasionally, until the chicken is no longer pink inside, or about 8 minutes. 4. Combine the pasta, pesto sauce, chicken, olives, and sun-dried tomatoes together in a large bowl. Toss until everything is well coated in sauce, then serve and garnish with basil. Macaroni and cheese. Think you can only make mac and cheese from a box? Think again. This recipe is tasty, completely gluten-free, and practically easier than the box version. Prep time, 15 minutes. Cook time, 45 minutes. Total time, 1 hour. Servings, 8. Ingredients: 10 ounces gluten-free elbow pasta, 1/4 cup butter, 3/4 teaspoon mustard powder, 1 teaspoon salt, 4 cups milk, 1/4 cup cornstarch, 4 cups cheddar cheese, shredded. Topping, optional. 2 slices of gluten-free bread, toasted and crumbled. 1/2 teaspoon paprika. Directions: 1. Preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. 2. Fill a pot of lightly salted water, cover it, and bring it to a boil over high heat. Add the elbow macaroni and reduce the heat to medium. Cook for about 8 minutes, stirring occasionally until tender but still firm. Drain and set aside. 3. In a saucepan over medium heat, melt 1/4 cup of butter. Stir in the mustard powder and salt, then shut off the heat. 4. In a bowl, whisk together the milk and cornstarch. Pour this into the melted butter and stir until everything is blended together. Simmer on the stove while stirring constantly to thicken the sauce, which should take about 5 minutes. 5. Add 3 cups of the cheddar cheese to the saucepan to melt it, then add the pasta and stir to combine. 6. Grease a baking dish and fill it with the pasta mix. Top the pasta with the remaining cheese and, if desired, breadcrumbs and paprika. 7. Bake the mac and cheese for about 30 minutes. When the top is slightly crunchy, serve. Ratatouille. Ratatouille is an excellent vegan and vegetarian dish that also happens to be gluten-free. It's a very simple recipe that only requires you to slice and bake. Prep time, 20 minutes. Cook time, 45 minutes. Total time, 1 hour and 5 minutes. Servings, 4. Ingredients: 2 eggplants, 4 small zucchinis, 2 bell peppers, 4 large tomatoes, 4 tablespoons olive oil, 2 garlic cloves crushed, 2 onions diced, 1/2 teaspoon sugar, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/4 teaspoon black pepper, 1 small bunch of basil torn. Directions: 1. Start by cutting the eggplants into quarters lengthwise, then slicing them about 1 inch thick. Cut the zucchinis into similarly sized slices. Remove the seeds from the peppers, then cut them into bite-sized pieces. 2. Next, peel the tomatoes using steam. Cut an X shape into the base of each tomato and add them to a large heat-proof bowl. Boil enough water to cover the tomatoes completely. Then pour the water over the tomatoes and let them sit for 1 minute before draining. 3. When the tomatoes have cooled, peel away the skin and chop them. 4. In a large pan on the stove, warm the oil over a low heat and add the onions. Cook, stirring frequently, for about 8 minutes. Mix in the eggplant and zucchini slices, raise the heat slightly to medium-low, and continue to cook for another 3 minutes. 5. Add in the garlic, sugar, salt, black pepper, and half the basil. Return the heat to low, cover, and let everything simmer for about 20 minutes. 6. Finally, add the tomatoes and cook, covered, for another 10 minutes. Top the dish with the remaining basil and serve. Spaghetti Bolognese. Spaghetti Bolognese uses a meat-based sauce that's thick and hearty. This is a great filling dish for when it's getting a little cold outside. Prep time 25 minutes. Cook time 1.5 hours. Total time 1 hour and 55 minutes. Servings 4 to 6. Ingredients: 2 tablespoons olive oil, 5 thin slices of bacon chopped, 500 grams ground beef, 2 celery sticks chopped, 2 carrots grated, 1 onion diced, 1 teaspoon dried herb mix, 6 ounces beef stock, 3 tomatoes chopped, 12 ounces gluten-free spaghetti, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/4 teaspoon pepper. Directions: 1. In a large pan, warm the olive oil over medium heat and stir in the bacon. Crisp it for about 4 minutes, then set it aside on a plate lined with paper towels, leaving the grease in the pan. 2. Add the ground beef and cook over a high flame. Brown the meat, then set this aside too. 3. Cook the onions in the same pan for about 4 minutes, then stir in the celery and seasoning and cook for another 5 to 8 minutes. 4. Add garlic, herbs, and wine, and increase the heat to high. Let the wine reduce for about 5 minutes, stirring occasionally. 5. Return the ground beef and bacon to the pan and stir in the tomatoes. Add a half cup of water and bring the contents of the pan to a boil. Lower the heat and simmer, covered, for 30 minutes to an hour. 6. While the bolognese is cooking, boil the water for the spaghetti. Cook the pasta for about 10 minutes, drain, and stir it into the sauce before serving. Chicken curry. The chili pepper gives this chicken curry recipe a mild kick. But if you're looking for more heat, feel free to add gluten-free spices like cayenne pepper and cumin. Prep time 20 minutes. Cook time 40 minutes. Total time 1 hour. Servings 12. Ingredients: 1 cup basmati rice, 1 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon olive oil, 8 boneless chicken thighs, 1 red chili sliced, 4 cloves garlic, 4 centimeters piece of fresh ginger grated, 150 grams yogurt. Directions: 1. In a medium saucepan, combine rice, 2 cups of water, and salt. Boil for 10 minutes, then reduce the heat to low and cook for another 5 minutes. Cover and set aside. 2. In a large non-stick pan on the stove, heat the oil and add the chicken. Cook for 15 minutes, flipping once to brown both sides. Set aside. 3. Add the chili, garlic, and ginger to the pan and sauté for 3 minutes. 4. Let the mixture cool completely, then blend until smooth. Transfer everything back into the pan, simmering for 15 minutes and stirring occasionally. Drizzle with yogurt to serve. Pumpkin soup with chili pumpkin seeds. Many canned soups use flour as a thickener. With this recipe, the pumpkin is plenty thick enough on its own with no gluten needed. Prep time 10 minutes. Cook time 30 minutes. Total time 40 minutes. Servings 4. Ingredients: 2 tablespoons pumpkin seeds, 1 pinch chili flakes, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 2 tablespoons sunflower oil, 2 onions diced, 2 cloves garlic chopped, 2 vegetable stock cubes, 28 ounces pure canned pumpkin. Directions: 1. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. 2. Lay parchment paper on top of a baking sheet and spread the pumpkin seeds out across the surface. Toast them in the oven, shaking the pan occasionally to prevent burning, for 8 to 10 minutes. Sprinkle the seeds with the chili flakes and salt. 3. Warm the oil over medium heat in a large saucepan. Sauté the onions and garlic for 3 to 4 minutes, stirring often. Add in the pumpkin and stock cubes along with 30 fluid ounces of water. 4. Raise the heat to bring the soup to a boil, then reduce it to low and simmer for 15 minutes. Let everything cool before blending it to puree until smooth, then warm the soup and top with the pumpkin seeds to serve. Honey chili chicken wings. Miss your favorite chicken wings no longer with these perfect gluten-free wings. Prep time, 15 minutes. Cook time, 40 minutes. Total time, 55 minutes. Servings, 4. Ingredients: 2 tablespoons honey, 60 milliliters gluten-free soy sauce, 2 chili peppers diced, 2 centimeters ginger root grated, 3 lemons juiced and zested, 2 tablespoons sunflower oil, 1 teaspoon 5-spice powder, 20 chicken wings, 3 to 5 fluid ounces crème fraîche, 2 scallions chopped. Directions: 1. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. 2. In a wide bowl, combine honey, soy sauce, chili peppers, ginger, the juice and zest of 2 of the lemons, oil and 5-spice powder, and mix together well. Toss with the chicken wings until they're fully coated. 3. Lay the wings in a roasting tray with the rest of the sauce and transfer to the oven. Bake for 30 minutes so the sauce is caramelized and there's no pink in the center of the chicken, occasionally rotating the wings to coat them and prevent burning. 4. While the wings are cooking, combine the crème fraîche and scallions with the juice of the 3rd lemon to make the dip. Stir and let the dip chill in the fridge until the wings are done. 5. Serve the wings with a side of dip and enjoy. Sides and snacks. Roasted Brussels sprouts. No need to avoid your sprouts anymore. When they're prepared right, Brussels sprouts can be an absolutely delicious and very healthy side to any meal. Prep time, 15 minutes. Cook time, 45 minutes. Total time, 1 hour. Servings, 6. Ingredients: 1½ pounds Brussels sprouts, yellow leaves removed and ends trimmed. 3 tablespoons olive oil or melted butter. 1 teaspoon salt. 1/2 teaspoon black pepper. Directions: 1. Preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. 2. Place the Brussels sprouts inside a large resealable bag. Drizzle them with oil and sprinkle the salt and pepper on top. Seal the bag, then shake to coat the sprouts. 3. Pour the sprouts out onto a baking sheet. Transfer them to the oven and roast them for about 45 minutes. Give the pan a shake every 5 minutes or so to ensure all sides are evenly crispy, and if needed, reduce the heat to keep them from burning. Serve hot. Easy flatbread. You might not be able to have regular bread, but this easy gluten-free flatbread recipe is much more than an adequate replacement. Prep time, 10 minutes. Cook time, 10 minutes. Total time, 20 minutes. Servings, 8. Ingredients: 14 ounces gluten-free self-rising flour. 1 tablespoon cumin seeds. 3½ ounces water. 10½ ounces yogurt. Directions: 1. Preheat the grill on medium, dust a baking sheet with flour and set aside. 2. In a bowl, mix together the flour, cumin seeds, water, and yogurt. Combine well until you've formed a dough without any lumps. 3. Divide the dough into 8 even balls, then flatten them to about 1/2 centimeter thick. Lay them out on the baking sheet and dust the tops with a little extra flour. 4. Transfer the baking sheet to the grill and cook the flatbreads 3 to 5 minutes on each side. You can transfer them off the sheet and onto the grill for a minute on each side if desired. Serve once they're puffed up and golden on both sides. Hummus. The best way to ensure your hummus is gluten-free is to make it yourself. This is a recipe for a basic hummus, but you can add more flavor with any fresh herbs or diced veggies you like. Prep time 10 minutes. Cook time 2 minutes. Total time 12 minutes. Servings 6. Ingredients: 1 14-ounce can of chickpeas, 5 ounces olive oil, 3 ounces lemon juice, 4.5 ounces tahini, 5 cardamom pods, 1.5 teaspoons ground cilantro, 1/2 tablespoon toasted pine nuts. Directions: 1. Drain the can of chickpeas and set the water aside. 2. To a blender or food processor, add the chickpeas, olive oil, lemon juice, tahini, cardamom, and cilantro. Blend until the mix is smooth, adding some of the water from the chickpea can if needed. 3. Serve sprinkled with pine nuts and enjoy on sliced vegetables or gluten-free crackers. Desserts. Chocolate brownies. You don't have to give up desserts just because you've gone gluten-free. Enjoy these moist and chewy chocolatey brownies as the perfect late-night snack. Prep time 20 minutes. Cook time 40 minutes. Total time 1 hour. Servings 12. Ingredients: 250 grams dark chocolate chopped, 250 grams butter cubed, 300 grams sugar, 4 eggs, 1/2 teaspoon vanilla extract, 100 grams gluten-free flour, 60 grams cocoa powder, 1/2 teaspoon sea salt fine, 150 grams milk chocolate cut into squares. Directions: 1. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Line the base of a 30 by 20 centimeter pan with parchment paper and grease the sides. 2. Fill a saucepan 1/3 of the way with water. Bring this to a simmer over low heat and rest a heat-proof bowl on top of the pan. 3. To the bowl, add the chocolate and butter to melt and combine. Stir often to prevent burning. Once melted, take the pan off the heat and let it cool. 4. In a mixing bowl, crack the eggs and pour in the sugar. Beat with a hand mixer for about 8 minutes to get the mixture thick. 5. Stir in the chocolate and butter mix, then add the vanilla, flour, cocoa powder, and salt. Mix the batter together, then gently fold in the milk chocolate. 6. Pour the batter into the pan, then bake for 30 to 35 minutes or until cooked all the way through. Let the brownies cool and firm, then serve. Oatmeal raisin cookies. Looking for a dessert with some nutritional value? Try these oatmeal raisin cookies, which are no less tasty just because they're a little healthier. Prep time 15 minutes. Cook time 15 minutes. Total time 30 minutes. Servings 20. Ingredients: 8 ounces granulated sugar, 8 ounces butter, 6 ounce can of condensed milk, 7 ounces plain oats, 5.2 ounces gluten-free self-rising flour, 5 ounces raisins, 1/2 teaspoon cinnamon. Directions: 1. Preheat the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. 2. Combine the sugar, butter, and condensed milk together in a large bowl. Stir in the oats, flour, and cinnamon and mix until well combined, then fold in the raisins so they're evenly distributed. 3. Form 20 even-sized balls of about a tablespoon worth of dough. Space them apart on the baking tray, then transfer the sheet to the oven and bake the cookies until golden for about 15 minutes. Conclusion. When you know what to avoid and what's okay to eat, following a gluten-free diet isn't such a pain after all. Throughout this book, you've learned the basics you need to conquer your gluten allergy, intolerance, or celiac disease and enjoy a healthier, more pain-free life. You now know exactly why it's so important to avoid gluten, as well as what you can and can't put on your plate. You've also learned how to make over a dozen delicious and nutritious gluten-free recipes that are sure to make you forget you're eating from a limited menu at all. Celiac disease can be difficult to manage at times, but it doesn't have to be a pain. Now that you know not only how to follow a gluten-free diet, but also why it's important, you can face the kitchen without fear, kick pain to the curb, and live your best gluten-free life. References: Barbeau, W.E., 2012, December. What is the key environmental trigger in type 1 diabetes? Is it viruses or wheat gluten or both? Autoimmunity Reviews, 12-295-299. Bishop, S., 2012, February 10. Left untreated, celiac disease can result in serious complications. Mayo Clinic. Celiac Disease Foundation, 2016, August 19th. 20 Things You Might Not Know About Celiac Disease. FDA, 2017, May 30. FDA sampling finds high level of compliance with gluten-free standards. Harvard Men's Health Watch, 2019, November 5. The Sweet Danger of Sugar. Asasi, C., Colmenero, I., Casco, F., Tejerina, E., Fernandez, N., Serrano Vela, J.I., Castro, M.J., and Villa, L.F., 2014, April 12. Fibromyalgia and non-celiac gluten sensitivity. A description with remission of fibromyalgia. Rheumatol International, 3411, 1607-1612. Kubala, J., 2019, March 6th. Is gluten bad for you? A Critical Look. Healthline.